So I figured I'd do a review of something that's bad, and boy oh boy, did material for that just kind of fall in my lap. I found the OA because I was looking for a sci-fi show blended with some fantasy elements. When I read the blurb on Netflix, I was like, hell yeah, that's exactly my jam. And I really wanted to like the OA, but goddamn is this series the height of pretentiousness. Spoilers ahead, obviously, but here's what happens. So this young woman, Prairie Johnson, is found after having been missing for 7 years. She's extremely vague as to why she was gone for so long at first, but there is one significant difference. She used to be blind, but she isn't anymore. Sounds interesting, right? That sounds like something that might have potential. So as she is eased back into real life, as far as that is possible for someone who disappeared and reappeared under such strange circumstances, she teams up with school bully Steve and tells him to get together 4 more people so they can hang out at night in an abandoned building in her neighborhood. She reveals to them that her birth name is actually not Prairie Johnson, but Nina Azarova, and she was the daughter of a Russian oligarch who eventually got killed by the Russian mafia. Also, before her father died, she almost died in a school bus crash as a little girl, and like an interdimensional magical witch lady in the realm of death, offered her life in exchange for her eyesight, but like in a nice, positive way. So she got sent to America to hang out at a boarding school for her own protection, which is, you know, quite prudent from a security standpoint. But then, when her father died, she got illegally adopted by the Johnsons. So over the course of her life, she has these visions that she will meet her dad again at the Statue of Liberty. So when she's 21, this blind girl runs away from home and goes across several states in order to get there. But instead of meeting her dad, she is kidnapped by a scientist called HAP, who's investigating all these weird things that happen in the show. She's locked in like a perspex prison box with 4 other people, and it turns out that they all, like her, had near-death experiences. Then, for 7 fucking years, this guy HAP knocks him out regularly with gas and puts them into a drowning machine where he kills them and then revives them for science. Now, to be fair, this entire section of the show I find deserves a compliment for its realistic depiction of abuse. There is plenty of opportunities where Prairie and Homer and the rest of the gang do have the opportunity to overpower HAP and maybe get out of his captivity. But they don't because he has such immense psychological power over them. This is a very realistic depiction of how these things actually work from a psychological perspective. There is, for instance, a scene where HAP takes Homer to Cuba to seduce a woman that he will later kidnap, but it doesn't really matter. And so things turn out in a way where Homer gains the physical upper hand in a situation and would be able to escape physically without a problem, but he doesn't because he doesn't believe that he can, because HAP says that he cannot. That's like really well done. Most shows just get that wrong. But back to the bad stuff. So in the realm of the dead, and this is true, the gang learns a set of dance moves that will give them superpowers. A significant amount of plot time is dedicated to them learning these dance moves. And just to demonstrate to you how ridiculous that is, I will actually show you footage from the show with these dance moves, even though that's probably gonna get the whole video copy claimed. It's just... I mean, what the fuck? I can picture so clearly the showrunners sitting on a couch, baked out of their heads, going, hey, how about, as a prank, we pitch a show to Netflix where the characters dance these most absurd dance moves that we can come up with a straight face, and then they get superpowers from them. And then the other showrunner goes, what a funny statement you've made right there. That is so incredibly unrealistic, and that is where it derives its humor from. No network executive would ever be willing to pay any money for that, and there certainly won't be a situation where a huge crowd of fans will memorize these hypothetical, completely crazy dance moves that we would come up with just to make them look funny and perform them on Times Square after the atrocious second season gets the show cancelled. You know, sometimes I have this thing where I will look at our inaction, at the big problems facing the world and us as a species, and I think to myself, are we really worth it? Do we deserve this sapience that we have been given? And I see this, and I think, no, just delete us from the simulation and give the octopus people a shot. At least they will start out with porn. It's like somebody dared these people to just take the most useless skill imaginable to man and make it the most powerful thing in their universe. Because yes, these dance moves can not only heal people of incurable diseases and even bring them back from the dead, they can also pierce the very fabric of reality to allow entrance into alternate universes. I mean, they can definitely, stop a school shooter that somehow just kind of appears out of nowhere at the finale of season 1. But I mean, maybe that was just because he was confused as fuck as to what was happening. See, here's the thing I like most about the first season of the OA. The farther the story progresses, and the more we get invested in Prairie's narrative, the more seeds of doubt are also planted as to its veracity. Maybe the entire story is just made up by a traumatized woman. The whole thing is told through the framing device of just being in that abandoned house, and she tells these things to them. Maybe they've just joined a weird interpretive dance cult and are not quite aware of that yet. They do, after all, find a lot of books from which the story could have been synthesized under her bed. And so long as there is that doubt, so long as the realism of the show in the character interactions is played straight, just the drama between the various really very interesting characters is really good. The media involvement, the family reactions, just the whole town being enthralled and also appalled by this just weird story of this blind girl who returned not blind after 7 years. All these characters with complex problems of their own, navigating this just borderline surreal experience. It is so good. The acting and directing, superb. I have to give credit where it's due. I genuinely believe, right, if they had only made season 1 of the show and then left the ending as vague as they did, it would have been a really good show. Which, by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, right? The reason the show is called the OA is because the main character doesn't call herself Prairie or Nina, she calls herself the OA, which means the original angel. Then after Prairie dies in the finale of season 1, we pop into season 2. If there was any level of ambiguity left over from the first season, within the first minutes of the second season, we just blow the bitch's back out and go straight into La La Land. So it turns out that while the other people in her cult were doing the dance while Prairie died, she did manage to get into an alternate universe where she enters the body of Nina Azarova, an alternate version of herself that never got adopted and whose dad just, didn't also get killed by the mafia. And she lives in San Francisco, has a Russian accent, and is, from what I can tell, a software developer. I'm not sure that they ever say what exactly she does specifically, but she does have an executive position at a company that develops an alternate reality game. Also, Joe Biden is the president. It's just a thing, that is. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I like about alternate history stories. But,
My name's Joe Biden. I'm running for President of the United States. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other person.
They also introduce a completely new character called Kareem Washington, who is a private investigator. He's trying to find his universe version of one of the characters that was in the original cult, in the original universe where Prairie came from. He's a perfectly interesting character, right? He's actually pretty cool. I like him. The thing is, there is no reason for him to be there in an alternate history storyline, really. Things usually work a bit different in those kinds of storylines. And toward the end of the season, he doesn't really do much anymore. So in this alternate universe, it turns out that Nina Azarova has been developing this AR video game with Peter Campbell, except he has a good hairline, that will lure kids into a haunted house. Just one of those things that you do when you have money. This haunted house is magical in a way that isn't, completely explained, but they do give the vague outlines of it. And people who go in there and can beat the traps that are in it get good truths about the nature of the multiverse. But also, apparently, there's a gas in the house that makes people hallucinate things. And I'm not sure why that's in there, because you can't now try to have some semblance of realism. We can already travel between dimensions. The cat is out of the bag. This season just hits you with so many surreal, completely out of left field, weird things that happen, where you're not sure if they're a joke or not. For instance, Prairie almost gets choked to death in a theater display by an octopus that can telepathically communicate with her. And none of that is ever picked up again. That is just something that happens. This is made especially irritating by the fact that in the original universe, the cult members that remain are all traveling across country to go to OA in San Francisco and cross over into this different universe. But in the universe that they're in, everything is still grounded in cold, hard realism and good character drama. Meanwhile, in the Haunted House universe, it's mountain rules. They always inject just enough realism into everything that's established that they never get to be able to establish that weird shit just kind of happens here, and that is frustrating to no end. The tonal shifts are like splinters of glass grating on chalkboard. Then, at the end of season 2, they travel to another alternate universe where the OA is a TV show and they are the actors of the TV show with some minor differences. So I genuinely thought that was a joke at first. My first thought was this has to be a joke. This cannot actually be where they're going with this for season 3. It's just that this show has so much potential and all of the good ingredients are mushed together with no rhyme or reason. None of them were cooked the way that you're supposed to cook them. None of them were seasoned in a way that they might complement each other. It is sometimes physically unappetizing to see how they interact. I can see the outlines of good storytelling here. I can see so many just interesting elements in this show, but they're all covered in such a thick sludge of artsy-fartsy obfuscation and faux symbolism that you can't see the forest for all the trees. It just kind of makes the whole show seem like a fever dream. And the people talking about this show, especially on Reddit, but all over the fucking internet, talk about over-intellectualizing something that is ultimately devoid of all significance just so you look smart. They want to see artsy ambiguity in things that are as obvious as Jeffrey Epstein's death. and then interpret levels of nuance into things that are just things. You know, the kinds of things that wouldn't be relevant even if the show was half as intelligent as it thinks it is. The OA is Rick and Morty for art students. That's just what it is. Except Rick and Morty is actually still a good show, and the OA is just kind of weird. I don't even hate the show. If anything, I'm disappointed as to how good it could have been, but then they just decided to blast it into cloud cuckoo land at every turn. I'm also not entirely happy that they cancelled it, because there were a lot of people who enjoyed it. And I mean, if that's the kind of thing you enjoy, go ahead and enjoy it. But also, I am kind of happy that they do have more money now, which may or may not be poured into better projects. Although, let's be honest, right? Usually, when shows get meta about being shows, it just is a steep downward curve. So ultimately, the OA receives a big ol' not worth my time stamp from me, with the special rating that is reserved exclusively for shows that start out good and then just really become bad. I mean, listen, everybody knows that I tend to just like things more than they are good. But unless you are into the power of interpretive dance to just an almost problematic degree, probably the OA is not going to be very interesting for you. Thank you very much for watching this review. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities so you can invite people over here who will be as angry at me as I am at the show. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, or potentially purchasing some of the merchandise that I have on offer. And in that spirit, do go literally do anything that isn't watching the OA, or in the unlikely scenario that I actually convinced you to watch the show, go ahead and watch the show. See you around, cunts.